Hello, hello. This is finally the last one of the re-recorded solution videos I have to deal with. And this is for a puzzle Check Yourself, which is my most recent one as of now. It's been about 11 days. I got really busy for the last 2 weeks. Haven't had time to either record videos or set any new puzzles. Hopefully that'll change now. Description says this original concept for this puzzle was a vague idea of wanting to force a specific bit of knowledge about German whisper lines, and it wound up becoming a path puzzle. It's my first 3 out of 5 difficulty puzzle. I don't really think most of it is 3 out of 5, but the estimate for that came less from difficulty of logic and more of required knowledge. That the important thing you need for the break-in is just like a 3 out of 5 star puzzle type of piece of information. So as usual, there's 4 hints down here. That's what the re-recording here is for. Oop, that is not solved and I can't restart it, so look away, I guess. There we go. Okay. So, we have normal Sudoku rules apply, place the digits 1 to 9, every row, column, and box, standard stuff. Dynamic fog, the grid is partially covered in gray fog. Placing correct digits will clear the fog, at minimum under that cell, sometimes in other parts of the grid. No guessing is required. I'm going to skip over this part for a second. Killer cages, digits in dotted line cages must sum to the number in the top left corner. Digits may not repeat within a cage. So, these two, maybe a third if it goes to a third, must sum to 5, those two sum to 13, etc. Prop key pairs, digits separated by a black dot must have one digit be double the other. That's these. Digits separated by a white dot, we don't see any right now, must be consecutive. So now we have whisper path. So it says draw a path through the grid which starts and ends with the cells with stars, which is row 1, column 1, and row 9, column 8. The path acts as a German whisper line, in which adjacent digits must have a difference of at least 5. So if you've solved a German whisper puzzle before, you'd be used to that already. That those two would have to be at least 5 apart, those would be 5 apart, those would be at least 5 apart. Cells with green circles are given as part of the path. So these, and these are guaranteed to be on the path. The path may only move orthogonally and cannot touch itself, even diagonally. So, that is it for the rules. So there's 4 hints here. So this will, like I said, require some kind of, say, intermediate level knowledge. It's one of those things that once you see it proven, it's very applicable in almost any puzzle that has a German whisper, especially ones that have fog. And this is effectively one long German whisper line. Realizing it is not easy, but once you do realize it, you'll be seeing it everywhere in all sorts of puzzles, because it's very useful. That's not necessarily right at the beginning yet. So, we'll say hint 1 first. Hint 1 says, knowing that row 1, column 1 is on the path means it can't have a 5 on it, and must be either a high number or a low number. You can work out which one it must be by using the clues in row 1 and column 1. So, let's first just analyze the grid, because there's a bunch of clues here I haven't even really visited yet. This is a 5 cage. It cannot be 3 cells, because if it was 3 cells without repeating numbers, which is how cages work, it would be at least 1, 2, and 3, summing to 6. So this has to be 2 cells, summing to 5, so it's either 1 and 4 or 2 and 3. Same logic applies here. Same logic applies here. This is a black dot, which has 1 and 2, 2 and 4, 4 and 8, or 3, 6. Same up here. Although this can't be a couple things, because we have a 13 cage that the left part is on. So that's not a 1, that's not a 2, it's also not a 3. So this is either 4, 8, or 2, or 3. And next, we have a 7 cage down here. Similar logic about how big the cage can be. It can't be 4 cells big, it would overshoot the total. So that is 7 and 3, and that must be 1, 2, 4. So, with that in mind, the other thing we can do is, well, I was going to say we could color that these cells are on the path. I'm actually going to be doing a different type of coloring in a second, so I'm not going to do that quite yet. But we do know row 1, column 1 has to be low or high, and it can't be 1, 2, or 4, based on that. And now the next important thing, now if you've solved my previous puzzle, how to dot your V's, this might be something you already spotted, like right away. We have basically the same kind of trick happening here in row 1. So we have a 5 cage, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a dot over here. So there's 2 sort of takeaways from this. Whenever you have, in that previous puzzle it would be a V, in this case it's a 5 cage, but in this case when you have a 5 cage and a black dot in the same row, column, or box, there's only so many things it can be. You can't have a 1 or a 2 on the black dot. Because think about it. If we had a 2 on this black dot, well, first, if there was a 1 on the black dot, it would have to be 1 and 2, and then that would make this 3 and 4, which breaks. So you could already say it couldn't have a 1 on it. It can't be a 1 because we already had the cage here, but then if you'd 10, well, what about 2? It would then have to be 2 and 4 on the black dot, and that would leave 1 and 3 over here. That also breaks the puzzle. So this cannot be a 2. So that's kind of one half of the deduction you can get, is that a black dot on the same line, in this case the same row as a 5 cage, cannot have a 1 or a 2 on it. The alternative other thing you can see now is that there must be both a 3 and a 4 between these. Because you either have 1 and 4, and then 3 and 6, or you have 2 and 3 with 4 and 8. Either way, there's a 3 and a 4 there, a 3 and a 4 here. So this cannot be 3 or 4, or really anything else in the row cannot be 3 or 4. This not being 3 means we now know this is a high digit. So that's what hint 1 gets you to. But still not quite enough. We can also fill in part of this. I didn't do that. If that's 4, that's 9. If it's 6, that's 7. And if it's 8, that's 5. So, now we have hint 2 is relevant now. So, it says, hint 2 says, once you know the polarity of row 1, column 1, you have to be aware of the, quote, bishop's rule, or as I call it, the checkerboard rule, which is exactly what the puzzle title refers to. And it says the solution video explains it in more detail. Hi, that's me. But I've included an attempt to explain it here in text. I'm not actually going to read out the rest of that, because this is not the text form, this is video form. It's going to be a lot easier to just improvise an explanation here in the video. So, what we're going to start with here is I'm going to color the grid based on diagonals. And there's sort of 2 types of diagonals. So, if we look at that first, any diagonal connected to that, we're going to call green. And now we can see we have one half of the grid colored like that. Now the other half, we can use a different color. Voila. So we have the grid colored based on sort of the 2 types of checkerboards that we have here. We have an outer checkerboard, which I'm going to say is green, and we have an inner checkerboard, which is purple. You know, you can call them whatever you want, really, but point is we have an alternating color pattern here when you do this. So now let's draw an example German whisper line in here and see if we can point out one of the important properties that happens here. So if we determine that we have a line working like this, and we think about the low-high pattern that sort of happens, what ends up happening here is, actually also an important thing to point out that I did here is the fact that we know in this puzzle the path, by extension the German whisper line, can only move orthogonally and doesn't go diagonally. That's hugely important. So this line follows that rule. So if we determine this was, say, you know, let's just say arbitrarily that this is a low digit. That would then be high, that's low, that's high. Like that. So what we end up with is you can see that the ends of this line end up being opposite polarity. The started as low, we alternated just like usual, and that became high at the end. The logic that we have to use here, the bishop's rule move, is when you have this sort of situation where the line can't move diagonally, it has to move orthogonally, which is just up, down, left, right, then we're always going to have this sort of pattern that whenever you stay on the same part of the checkerboard, the digits will stay the same polarity. And in this case, the example that might be easier to see that is, we have a line starting on purple. As long as we keep moving only orthogonally, every other purple cell on the line will always be low. And by extension, anything on the other checkerboard, which in this case is green, would always be high. And that follows here on this line. Now, if you want to prove that in kind of the general case, you can just think about it like this. You know, let's say we start a line up here. It doesn't really matter where it's going. If we know it has to move orthogonally, then every time it moves to another cell, it's always going to be doing one polarity flip at the same time as when it flips from one checkerboard to the other checkerboard. So whatever one it starts on, that will always be, you know, say low. Any other time it returns to that same portion of the checkerboard, it's going to be the same polarity. Because again, every time we flip from low to high, we're also flipping which checkerboard we're on. So that wouldn't really be that useful if we didn't also know that there's only one line in the puzzle. I'm going to undo this coloring. Because we know there's only one line in the puzzle, we know that this is going to have to connect with these, and those will then also have to connect with this down here. Now I'm going to do green coloring to represent that these are on the path. We can use that rule here. We can say that we don't really care where this line goes and how it does whatever it does. We know it's going to have to get to this cell eventually. We know it has to get to this cell eventually and that cell eventually. So if we think about the diagonal bishop rule logic, no matter where it goes, this is high, that's low, that's high, that's low, that's high, that's low. It really doesn't matter what path it takes. This will always be a different polarity as this because they're not on the same checkerboard. So we have that. This is on the same checkerboard, so that will be high. Those would have to be low. And now using this is on this portion of the checkerboard, that's low. That would mean this would have to be low. So this works in both the positive direction, that we could say we know this is on the path, so now we know the polarity. It also works in the opposite effect as well. That we could do, for example, this is high. Any other cell that's on the path in this diagonal would have to be high as well. So that cell is never going to be on the path. We can say that for sure, because if it was on the path, it would have to be a high digit. We could do an example. High, low, high, low, high, low, high. If we take a different path, high, low, 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 high. It doesn't matter what path you take, this would have to be high in order for it to be on the path. It's never going to be high, so that never will be on the path. So that's the sort of extent that you can use this rule. That's a long explanation, but that's a very useful trick to know anytime you have a puzzle along these lines. So that's what hint 2 explains. Hopefully the text version of the hint explains that decently well enough, but the video's here to supplement that. Let's see. Okay, so we have a little bit of stuff we can do here. So hint 3 points out, once you know, or rather, once you recognize the pattern from hint 2, you can deduce what that row 4, column 4 must be high, which just did. And in turn, you can prove the cage must be a 1, 2, 7 cage. So there's more to the hint. First, let me read that out. This results in an interesting pattern of 1, 2 pairs around the center of the puzzle, which interacts with the 5 cages. Pay special attention to which type of 5 cage each one can be. 1 and 4 or 2 and 3, and then see if you can work out what row 1, column 8 must be. So that's a lot of info at once. Let's tackle this one at a time. The chapter in this video will just be tagged to when I explain that, but realistically, this whole next, 2 or 3 minutes will all be about this hint. So let's look at that first. It mentions that we know what type of cage this is, so let's just logically work through it first. We can see that the cage goes to the right, and it also goes down. You can also see it doesn't really go into this spot here by the portion of the diagonal part of the line there, but we don't really need to know that. What we do know is this cage is at least 3 cells big. And because this is a high digit, 6, 7, 8, 9, it can't be anything bigger than that. If we made this a 4-cell cage summing to 10, it would have to be 1, 2, 3, 4. This can't be any of those. So this is definitely the extent of the cage, these 3 cells. Now, given that, this can never be 8 or 9 because we'd overshoot the total. Now we can think, well, could this be 6 or 7? If we put a 6 here, we'd have double 1s here. And then in this cage, this being 6, we would need a total of 4 to make up for it. We'd have to have 1 and 3 here. But 1 is ruled out from there, 1 is ruled out from here. So 6 does not work as an option here, because it would make the rest of the 10 cage impossible to fill. So this must be 7. No, that's still in color mode. That must be 7. And this must be 1 and 2 with it. 7 up here, by German whisper logic, then also has to be 1, 2 like that. So that's the first part of that hint. Let me reread the second part of it. It says, this results in an interesting pattern of 1, 2 pairs around the center of the grid, which interacts with the 5 cages. Let's look at that. We have a 1, 2 pair in this column, so that's not 1, 2, which means that's not 3, 4. This gives a 1, 2 pair here, which means that's not 1, 2, that's not 3, 4. And the same thing over here, 1, 2, 3, 4. We also, I never took this out from the black dot. We worked out up here that the dot can't have 1 or 2 on it. So we can do that down here. Okay. So now the final part of hint 3 says, pay special attention to which quote-unquote type of 5 cage each one can be, either 1 and 4 or 2 and 3, to see if you can work out what row 1, column 8 must be. So, let's do some additional color. I'm going to temporarily, oh, that's not right. Temporarily undo this coloring in the center here, and we're going to use red or green and pink to represent the 2 types of 1, 2. We have 1, 2 pairs. We don't know which one's 1, which one's 2. But we can use that coloring to work for that. Now, this being green means this one over here must be pink. This being pink means that one must be green. So what that tells us is this 5 cage and this 5 cage are the two different types of 5 cages, you could say. One will be 1 and 4, the other will be 2 and 3. We know that because we know these 1, 2s are going to be different digits from each other. So by extension, is a different color, we could say that the 3-4 pair must be different. 1 is 3, 1 is 4. Now you might be able to see where this is going already, but we point out row 1, column 8 now can't be 3 or 4, because 3 and 4 both appear here. This is an example of a Y-wing. We have this sort of pattern where we have two cells that are both looking at the same cell that's sort of almost kind of diagonal and like a Y shape to them. That can't be 3, that can't be 4. So we know that must be 8, which by black dot logic it means that's a 4, which by cage logic means that's a 9. And now we're going to get a ton of information in the grid. So we get 3 over here, 3 and 2. That gives us 1 and 1, 2 and 2. That gives 1 and 4 down here. 1 and 4 comes out from there. 8 comes out from up here. And now we can even say what this is, because this now can't be a 2-3 cage, because that would break this cell. That's 1, that's 4. This now no longer has a 4 on it, so it can't be an 8. That's a 3-6 dot. 1, 4 here means that's a 2. 2 there means this is a 3. Oop, I took out the 7 at one point. That's an accident. Okay, so that clears a bit of the fog. Let me put the coloring back. We now have this revealed, so we know that's on the path. Let's see. We know these are not going to be on the path just by extent of the fact that the line can't touch itself at all. And we know the line is going here and then going up, or vice versa. So it's never going to return to either of these cells, because it would be touching the path. Okay. So let's do some Sudoku, because we've got a bunch of digits now. We have 1 and 1 over here, 1's not there, so 1's in one of these two spots. 1's ruled out from there, it's ruled out here, so 1 is up here. 2's are ruled out there. 2 in this box just is there. And that also means 7 down here, means 7 is there. Let me just see what the next hint is, just so I make sure I don't solve anything too much here. Okay, no, it's more of a general hint. What does that give us here? That gives us 5, 8, 9 there. And that gives us 4 and 6 left over in the column here. And that means this is not a 1. Now, we already could have said that anyways, because if this was a 1, that would now have to be a 2, which it can't be. But that gives us a 1 here. And now this being on a dot means that's either 3, 5, or 7. There's probably some more Sudoku we can do. 4 is there. You don't really have to pay too much attention to classic Sudoku this early in the solve, but I'm just trying to catch stuff while I can. Okay, I think that's good enough for now. So now we can read hint 4, which again is more general than anything else. Hint 4 says, once the break-in fog clears and you can see row 1, column 7. Where is that? Row 1. Is that a typo, maybe? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Huh. Yeah, that's meant to be row 9, column 7. Alright, well, I'll fix that. Once the break-in fog clears and you can see row 9, column 7, you will not get any new fog clearing of the new clues until the path is fully filled in with digits. For the most part, this just takes classic Sudoku skills, while also factoring in the rules about how the path can move. Look ahead a step or two on the path at all times to find sub-paths that would break the puzzle. To fully fill the path, it helps to do a lot of non-path coloring. This means using the bishop's rule again, but to color any cell that is definitely not on the path as a different color, so that you can visualize where are the ways that the path could go in the grid. This strategy allows you to prove something about row 2, column 4 at a certain point, which is this. So, let's just go back to normal solving and pay attention to the path again. So we had this revealed. We know the path's going to go to the left, so this now has to be a high digit, which is either 8 or 9, and it can't be 9, so that just is 8. And now the path has to go somewhere from here. It could go here and be low, or it could be here and be low. But if it went here, this is the kind of looking ahead part. If the path went here, where would it go next? This is low, it would have to go to a high digit, and it can't go to any high digits up there. So that means the path definitely goes up, and now this is a 1, 2, or a 3. It must be a 1. Now again, the path has to go somewhere from here to be on a high digit. Let's fill in that first. That actually gives us a 4 here. In order for this to go to a high digit, it can't go here. And it can't go left because that's not high. So it's going to have to go up to a high digit here and be a 6 or a 7. But it can't be a 6, because we have 3, 6. So that is a 7. I don't know why I marked that red. This is now 7, so we're going to have to go somewhere and be a low digit. So 5 away from that means either a 1 or a 2. This is not 1 or 2, so that definitely does not end up on the path. It could go here and be 1, 2, in which case it would be a 2, or it could go here, in which case it would also be a 2. So I'm going to use slash coloring for that. We're going to say it could go one of those 2 ways. What we do know is that the path is certainly never going to go over here, and by extension, it's certainly not going to go there. Let's see. Okay, let's look at this end of the path here. So this is going to need a low digit to go to. So it could go here. It actually cannot go here. So it cannot go to the right because there are no low digits available. For a little bit of a behind-the-scenes fun fact, that is the whole reason this white dot is here. There's a secondary reason that the white dot is there that is a benefit, but the main reason it was put here is because it forces 1 here, which takes out 1 from there, and it forces the path to go down. That can't be high, I mean low, so that means this must be low, it must go down. Must be a 3. Now because this is a 3, this has to be 5 away from it, so that ends up being 9 there. So now this is going to go to the right and be 8 or 9, in which case it would be an 8. And it would have to go, or it could go down, in which case it would also be an 8. So we have this sort of mirroring effect going on that is similar to this, where it could be the same digit in either spot. I'm going to use, again, the slash coloring. Maybe let's ask where this goes. It's not going to go up, because then the path would touch itself. It could go over here and be 7, 8, or 9. Can't be 7. It could go here, and it could be any of those. Now here, the path could go up and be high, which it could be if it was a 6. So I'm using corner marks here to represent what it would be if the path moves that way. Or it could go here, in which case it would be 6, 8, or 9. So we put in a bunch of stuff. Now in order to continue, we need to do more non-path coloring, like the hint mentions. So let's do that for a bit. Let's look at diagonals and see where it would break things. So I'm going to use this diagonal first and say this is a high digit, so any other part of this diagonal that is not high is not on the path, such as this. That's a low digit. That will never be on the path, just because, again, no matter what path you take, if we go low, high, low, high, low, high, it would have to be high. Similar diagonal logic can be applied if we maybe just start counting as we move, like low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high. That now can't be on path because it's not high. Now this is certainly not on the path, because where would the path go if it went there? Same logic with this. If it went here, there'd be nowhere for it to break out. Let's see. That's low. Let's start over here. If that's high, low, high, that would have to be high, so that's not on the path. Low, high, low, that's not on the path. And we don't know if this is, because we don't know if that's a 3 or a 6. But I think this is enough to prove what we're trying to prove now. Well, we can say that, at least one tiny thing, that if the path, say, went here, would it be able to go here? In which case, if it did, it would have to be a 3, so that actually is, we could say that for sure. But what we can do is, we can say, let me try to think about how we want to draw this on the grid. I should have thought this part out before I started. While I think about that, we'll do some more path coloring up here. That's low, high, so that wouldn't work. Low, high, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. I've lost track of what that would be if that's low, high, low, so that doesn't work either. That's high, low, high, that doesn't work. That could be on the path. High, low, high, that's not on there. Okay, so I believe we can now look at this lower area. So the question you want to ask yourself is, can this be on the path? And that's why the hint mentions row 2, column 4, to draw your attention there. So the question would be, again, if this is on the path, what would that mean about the path? Well, if this was high, could it go to the right then? The answer to that is no, it couldn't be any low digits. So if the path goes up, it's then going to have to go left. And if it goes left, it's going to have to connect with this. That's just the only way for it to go. It can't go up. And if it goes here, and now it's too close to this. So we have one, I'm going to use line for this. We would say that the line would definitely be doing that if it went up. So now the question is, well, where does it go now? It can't go to the left, because it went to the left. In order for it to get anywhere, it would have to double back on itself, which doesn't work. So the line would have to go down here and be high. It would go here and be low. And if this is a low digit, can it go to the right? Well, the answer is no. If it went to the right, it would have to become a high digit, and this is a white dot. So it's going to have to be very close to it, one away from it. If this was a 4, which it can't be, but let's say that was a 4, it could become a 5, which would sort of flip the polarity, but you can't put a 5 on a green line. The line would have to continue down. And so now this being high, low, low. Okay, so that's one path thing I missed. That this is never going to be on the path, because it's either going to be 5, in which case it's not on the path, or it would be low, which it can't be. Now you might be able to see the problem now. Where does the line go from here? It's trapped. If the line goes anywhere down here, it can't get out. It cannot connect with the end of the line. And all that happened because we assumed the path went up into row 2, column 4. As soon as it does that, it forces this portion of the line to go down, in which case it ends up trapped down in box 7. So this is definitely the hardest step, I think, in the puzzle, past the break-in. It's hard to notice that. I have found that people solving this have had usually no problem seeing that, just because it seems most people are familiar with the non-path coloring as a major strategy. Yeah, so all that to say, it definitely is not on the path to go upwards. It could still be a 6, but that's, the point is it's not on the path. The path must go to the right over here, in which case it is now 6, 8, or 9. It's not going to be 6, just based on if we do that, it's going to have to be paired with another 1 somewhere in either of these spots. But we do know now that the path must be low to continue next. And could it go up and be low? No, it can't. We have no low digits available. So the path must go to the right, in which case it is definitely a 4. And that, funny enough, does give us a 6 up here. That gives us 4 over here, so this is no longer 7. And now wherever the path goes next, it's going to be next to a 4, which means it's going to have to be a 9. And the only spots available for it to go that could have a 9 is down. So that must be 9. This is no longer 9. So now which way does the path go now would be the next question. If it's a 9, it would have to be with a low digit 1, 2, 3, 4 in either of those spots. And it seems perfectly valid for it to go either way. But, again, think one step ahead. If this was a 3, that seems like it would be fine, but if this was a 3, where would the path go now? It can't go up. And if it went down, it would have to be another 8 or 9 to be 5 away from that. And this can't be 8 or 9 based on the column. So this does not go to the right because it breaks the path then. That must be 3. That gives 6 and 3 there. Once again, now let's ask where does it go next? If it went over to the left, we would have a problem because the path can't get back out and connect here without doubling on itself. So once again, it's going down in 8 or 9, or it's going right and being 8 or 9, but it can't go right and be 8 or 9 just by that same logic from a moment ago. So it must go down and be 8. Which means the path does go to the right now to connect with this. Which means that's not on the path. Let's do a bunch of coloring, because we know none of this is on the path now. I'll probably take away this coloring in a bit, once the path is done, but... This is not on the path, which means that's not on the path. This certainly isn't. So the main question mark is all this stuff now. Got a lot of digits. Let's do some more classic Sudoku. This is either 5 or 6. Now this is either 5, 7, 8. 8's not in those. 8 must go here. That takes out 8 as an option here, and that tells us that the path must go down, because again, it had to be an 8 no matter which way it went. So the path is going down. That makes that an 8. That's not on the path. But now the question is, where does it go from here? If this was 8, now this has to be 1, 2, or 3 to connect somewhere. And can't go down because there's no 1, 2, or 3 for it to be. So the path must go to the right, be 1, 2, or 3. That means that's a 2, not that. Path goes there. Now this is either 7, 8, or 9, and now it has to be 8. That's not the path. And as you can see, that did clear some fog. It was a little, maybe not obvious because the red coloring everywhere, but we now have a new cage worth 19 over here, and a cage worth 16 up here. So I'm going to undo all this red coloring, since we now know the full extent of the path. I find it kind of makes the digits a little hard to see. Could have just selected all of these cells, but I found it more satisfying to do it one at a time. I'm going to leave the main path coloring, though, as green, because that's fine enough. So, 19 cage, 16 cage. Consider this an unofficial hint number 5 that we're going to need to do some classic Sudoku for us to make any progress on this, so let's look at that first. So this box is missing 4 things. We need a 2, 5, 6, 9. 2 can't go in any of those, so 2 is here. 5, 8, 9 in this row are left there, so this is either 5 or 9. This is 4, 5, 6. No, 5, 6, 7, rather. 5, 6, 7 here means that's not a 5, that's 3. And that leaves us with 4 and 9 left over there. This column is missing 3, 5, 6. That gives a 5, 6 pair in the row, so that's 7. So we have a 4, 9, and a 5, 6 pair, so the only thing left for this cell is an 8. 5, 6 pair in row 6 here means this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 9. And completing this row, we have a triple, so 3, 5, 6 there. Let's see where to look next. 2 in this box up here is limited down to only, I believe, 1 cell, because it can't go there, can't go there, can't go in those, and it also can't go in the corner, so that's a 2. That leaves only 1 spot for 1 in this, so that's 1 there. Finishing this row, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That makes, what's left over here? We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's kind of a lot, but it's worth pencil marking that, because you notice that we end up with a 5, 6, 7 triple there, so these can't be 5, 6, or 7. Easier way of just seeing that is that 4 has to go here in the box, 1 has to go here. That gives us 9, gives us 4, gives us 5 here. Takes out 5 from up here. This row needs another 5 or 7 to finish that off. And now that we have 5 in the 19 cage, we can tackle this now, because it's a little easier to see. I think you could still work this out if you just typed in all the options that could go here. And if you looked at all the options that could go up here, you could work this out, but I find it easier, and it's more intended to look at it now. So this is 5, so what we can say is this is effectively just a 14 cage that's left over, because 19 and 5 gives you 4. Now we don't know where it's going, but wherever it goes, it's going to have to be a total of 14 for the sum. So the cage definitely doesn't go to the right, because that would give you 17. So the cage is going to have to go down. Now we don't know if it goes further, but if we pencil mark the rest of this box fully, we can maybe see it a little more easily. It can't be 1, 2, 4, 5. This can't be 7, 8, 9, 3, 7, 3, 8. I am terrible at this right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 3, 8, 9. Okay, so the question now is, well, where does the cage go? If it went to a 4th cell, anywhere it goes, it would overshoot the total. Because this is at least 8, so the only thing left over would be 6 left over. And as soon as we go here, as you can see, the minimum there is 6. So if we try to minimize what's happening in this cage, there's no way to make it a 4-cell cage. Which means this is the extent of the cage. Meaning, again, these two numbers would have to sum to 14 to make up for the 5 being taken out already. So the only way to do that is 8 here, 6 there. That gives 3, 7, 9 there. All this pencil marking is going to come in handy, because this is all going to fill itself in now. That's not 6. These aren't 6. I'm going to take out that coloring. Let's see. Now it's probably worth looking at 16 cage. I believe that's next. We can do a little better. We can see that 6 is actually limited to here in this box, which means that's not 6. And that's actually useful combined with the 6 as well, because now 6 in this box must go there. And that gives us number in the grid, so now we know this cage, first of all, it goes to the right, and it's going to have to be something that totals to 10 between them. Now this is either 3, 5, or 7. And once again, try to think, well, could this ever be a 4-cell cage if it went down, maybe? And if we do, we're just going to overshoot the total, because these would be at minimum 3 and 5 with a 6. That gives you 14 already, and now doing that would make the total too big. So this is, again, a case of exactly 3-cell cage here. We have a 6 taken out already, so these 2 cells need to sum to 10. We can't have a 5 then, so that makes this a 7, and that makes that a 3. That is going to be enough to resolve the grid. And in the middle right there. And that was the longest of the 3 videos I made tonight. This one's very long. Wow. I think this is the longest of any of them, really. It takes a while to explain the bishop rule thing. I wanted to make sure I did it with a really good amount of detail, just for people who are new to it. I don't know. I don't think I'd call this my favorite puzzle. I mean, I just called the sorry that's mistaken. I already just called that one my favorite a bit ago. I'm very proud of this one. I'll say that, just because it was again a case of I've never done a puzzle like this, and I was able to make it work after staring at it for like 3 to 4 nights. But you know, it's probably not my favorite to solve, but I am very proud of it. So I believe that's it now. I have the Variant 101 series that I'm not sure if I'm going to re-record the solutions for that as well. But as far as the main ones go, that is finally the last one I have to re-record now, so that's good. Yeah, thank you for watching.